All right, guys, welcome to Burt's Basics. Today we're doing medical anatomy and physiology map. Standard 1 comes at 6 and 7, with your body cavities and quadrants. So if someone comes to the doctor and is like, Doc, I'm not feeling good, I hurt, and they say, where? And you say, like, in my body, you're going to have a problem with that. So what we do is we take the body and we divide it into parts and pieces. So on Standard 6, we're going to talk about the cavities that your body's in. Now, cavities are big areas of your body that hold lots of different things. So if we look at all our cavities, these are the cavities which you have to know for this class. So let's take the yellow ones first. So if you look at your yellow one, that's your cranial cavity, which obviously is the cavity that has your brain. It's kind of important. Then you have your spinal cord running down into your vertebral cavity. Together, the cranial cavity and the spinal cavity make up your dorsal cavity. Now, you learned in midterm, and when we did our directions, that dorsal means to the back. Now, the problem with this is the class, every time I ask someone to point to their brain, they always point to the front. Now, be very careful. Everything in yellow is my front cavity, which we call my ventral. So I need you to learn that my brain is not necessarily on the front, it's on the back. And the best way to kind of help you out with that is if you're ice skating and you totally fall on your back and you turf it, your back's going to hit the ground, but so is the back of your head. The back of your head's going to crack the ice, and trust me, I've seen many concussions where the back of your head hits. So from now on, when I say, hey, where's your brain? I want you to take your finger and point to the back of your head like this so that you know that's in the dorsal cavity, not the front. So that's our first cavity. I think we're feeling pretty good about that. So my cranial cavity is my brain, my spinal cavity is my spinal cord, and together they make up my dorsal. Now if we look at everything in the front, yellow, this is where it gets a little tricky. The front cavity is called my ventral cavity, and it goes all the way from up here by your clavicles, your shoulder blades, all the way down to your pelvis bones. This is all my ventral cavity. So if someone comes in and says, oh, I'm not feeling very well, I hurt my ventral cavity, man, they could have lung problem or heart problem or, I don't know, liver problem or stomach problem. There's so many problems they can have. So your ventral cavity is kind of like these dolls here. You know, like they're nesting dolls. You open them up and another one pops out. You open it up and another one pops out. So when you actually take these apart, they all have their own cavities. So what we're going to do is we're going to start with my thoracic cavity. Now, as far as basic goes, thoracic cavity goes from my shoulders to my diaphragm. Now, if you don't know where your diaphragm is, all you have to do is follow your rib line. So basically, from my rib line to my shoulders is my thoracic cavity. So this little kind of hazed line right here, the shadowed line down here, that's your diaphragm. So your thoracic cavity is just right here, also known as your chest cavity. Now let's do those nesting dolls, which means they got to pop out and pop out and pop out and pop out. And these are the cavities found within. Now, once again, this looks pretty scary and daunting, but you're going to be okay. Here's my diaphragm right here. So what we're focusing on is we're focusing on the purple, the turquoise, and the orange. All of these four are in my thoracic cavity. I'm not worried about the red because that's my cranial and my spinal, which are in the back. So now we're focusing on the ventral cavities on the front. So let's go ahead and look at these four cavities for the thoracic cavity. In order to truly help you understand this a little better, we are going to talk about serous membranes later on in this class, but every organ is like a double shrink wrap protective bag. Every organ has its own protective coating. So if you look at this hand in the balloon, every organ is like this. It has its own protective bubble. So if you look at your heart, you can see it has its own protective bubble. These are called serous membranes. Your lungs have their own protective bubble. And that's what all these quadrants are. The purple is one bubble. The turquoise is another bubble. Since they're in different bags, we call them different cavities. So if we're looking at my thoracic cavity, there's different parts in there, and these are the ones you have inside of them. So let's take them out at a time. So if you guys want to pause this, you can do this anytime you want. But I'm going to go ahead and start with these guys right here. These are the four cavities found in your thoracic cavity. You have two pleural cavities, one mediastinum and one pericardial. So let's start with the pleur. If you take a body and do a transverse cut like this through the thoracic between your diaphragm and your shoulders, these are all the organs found in them. And there's a lot. But if you notice, this is the biggest one found on the lateral surface, and that is your lung. Pleur is a vocab word for rib. So you have two rib cavities. This rib cavity has its own balloon. This rib cavity has its own balloon, so the lungs are in their own separate containers, which is freaking awesome. If you get kicked by a horse here and this balloon pops and this lung starts to deflate, this lung is in its own complete different serous membrane. It's unaffected by the other side. So you have two pleural cavities which involve your lungs, and then you have everything in between. Everything in between is your mediastinum. Sternum's another word for your sternum, and media is middle. So basically, in between your lungs is everything in mediastinum. There's a lot of cool things in mediastinum. So if we look, my trachea goes down in mediastinum, my esophagus goes mediastinum, but there's really only one thing in mediastinum I truly care about, and that's this guy right here in the middle. That's your heart. He's also found in mediastinum. Now, also in mediastinum, you have, so if you take out the heart, he has his own bag as well. So if I backtrack a little bit, check this out. Purple, pleura, one lung. Other purple, pleura, second lung. That's two cavities. Everything in this yellow, orangish in the middle would be mediastinum, third cavity. And then inside mediastinum, like a bag, you can pull out your heart. And then you have one that goes around your heart called your pericardial. So once again, the four cavities are pericardial. Let's put it in my mediastinum sac. Slide him in between my lungs. Pleura, pleura. Pleura, pleura, mediastinum, pericardial. All in my thoracic cavity. The next cavities we got to talk about is the pink one on this board, which is your abdominal cavity. Your abdomen goes from your diaphragm to the beginning of your hips. And then in green, underneath that, you have your pelvic cavity, which is where your bones are, your pelvis is. Now, in this class, you're very lucky because they tie these two together. So let's go to that guy. So in this class, they're going to combine them always as abdominal pelvic cavity, which is everything from my diaphragm to the bottom of my hips. There's so many things in there. So when you go to school, you're going to have two different models. Now, this one might scare you a little bit because you got the model up here that has so many different regions, but I have good news for you. In this class, they don't do the 9-quadrant model. They only do 4. And these 4 are divided into upper quadrants and lower quadrants. And since I have 2 upper quadrants, I have to divide them evenly. So I divide them into a right upper and a left upper. So think of it getting a tattoo where your belly button's the bullseye. You get a big bullseye in the middle. You have 2 uppers and 2 lowers. Now, these are the guys you have to know in each one. So go ahead and document these down. On your upper right side, there's a couple key organs like your liver and your gallbladder. Those are huge in the upper rights. Now, on the upper lefts, there's a ton, and they tend to start with S. So you got your stomach and your spleen, and behind your stomach, directly posterior stomach, is your pancreas. So there's a lot of things going on from my diaphragm to my belly button. So if someone comes in complaining of severe pain in my upper right quadrant, the upper right quadrant then would be a liver infection or a gallbladder infection or something like that. You would rule out the stomach because that's in your upper left quadrant. The only other trick on your upper quadrants is the kidneys. The kidneys are also upper quadrant. So if I say what quadrant the kidneys are on, and you have a choice between upper and lower, they're upper. Now down in the lower quadrant, we have a lot of things down here too, but the problem is intestines are hard to quadrant. Your intestines are in every quadrant. Your large intestine's in every quadrant. Your bladder down here is really hard to see because he's kind of in both quadrants. So the only thing we tend to really focus on the lower quadrants is this little worm-like structure that's coming off the cecum, and that's called your appendix. The appendix is in the lower right quadrant. The other ones they want you to know is the ovaries. The ovaries are obviously protected by your hips, so they're also in the lower quadrants as well. So if we take a peek, these are the things that they want you to know. So let's make sure we cover them all. In the upper right quadrant, we have our liver and our gallbladder, which are tied together, and my kidney. They're upper. My other upper quadrant, I also have my spleen, my stomach, and my other kidney, and I added pancreas because I think that's important to know as well. In the lower quadrants, there's not that much besides ovaries, which are on both sides, and the almighty appendix. And remember, whenever we're looking at this, it's you. So if you need to, look at the webcam, lay on a table, dead. Okay, this is my right hand, so these are my right quadrants. Okay, right hand, right quadrants. Left hand, left quadrants. It's always on you. All right, guys, so those are the quadrants you need to know. So here's what I'd like you to do. Go ahead and knock out this quiz. There's two pages quiz, so go ahead and pause this, practice on 1 through 8, and the answer keys at the end. And thank you so much for watching Burt Body Basics. So on this one, before you go, I guess, and you can go back and pause, you do whatever you need. What number do the following organs go in? So is the liver in 1, 2, 3, or 4? Can I give you a huge warning here? Remember, if you get these backwards, you don't miss one. You miss them all. So if you're looking at this person, this is they're laying on a table. This is their right hand. So this is my right quadrants over here. 1 and 3 are right quadrants. 2 and 4 are left quadrants. Okay, I'm going to the answer key. We'll see you later.